got a voice, so just speak up on it. I got the beat that put heat up on it. False information, do not lean on it. Politics, they go take credit for accomplishments. When we should be leaning towards providence. What we talk about will make a lot of sense. We're not doing this show for a lot of sense. We're talking topics just to come together, gotta make it better. The justice system accepting these letters. Black Lives Matter is the trendsetter. By his conversation, splitting people in reality, we are not treated equal. By his conversation, splitting people in reality, we are not treated equal.
What is up? Thank you guys for tuning in. It is Saturday night, and it is time for Listen Up with Limmie. This is our second episode, and I'm a little less nervous this time than I was the first time, but I am super excited to have a very dear friend here with me tonight, and looking forward to just chatting, getting to know. Maybe I'll learn something about him I don't already know. You all know him as 1/4 of the crossover supergroup Il Divo. I know him as just David, but please help me welcome my guest, David Miller. David!
Hey, Limmie!
What's going on, my man?
How are you, my friend?
I'm doing pretty well. How about yourself?
Doing all right.
Good deal. Thank you so much for coming on and sitting with me. And I know you've had a busy last week, so I appreciate you giving me this time to just kind of chat with you.
Well, thanks for having me on. Happy to be here.
Okay. Well, let's just start from the top, from the beginning. Tell us about your upbringing. Where are you from? How did you grow up?
Well, I was a military brat. My dad was an officer in the Navy, and I was born in San Diego, and he retired around age 8. And my family at that point picked up from San Diego and moved to Colorado, trying to assess the job market out there and put down roots. Lived in Lakewood and Littleton, Colorado, west and south of Denver, and found a really interesting cross-section of life out there. I was a Cub Scout. Found music pretty early on. Started playing trombone when I was 8 years old, and found my voice.
Trombone behind you right
Yeah. Oh, it's on this side. The camera's reversed. I pull it out every once in a while. Practice, do some scales and whatnot. Last week, I did the takeover for Il Divo Socials. So I kind of took everybody on a journey of exactly what I'm telling you, of kind of my history with music. One of the days I devoted entirely to music. And so I found my voice around high school, started doing the musicals, and then I had a choir teacher, Russ Hillock was his name, and he noticed I had a voice and encouraged me to get voice lessons, which I did. And that voice teacher studied in the IVPP program with Richard Miller and was a disciple of his. And so she said, "You need to go to Oberlin. This is going to, and you need to study with Richard Miller." And I made the audition, and she put in a call to him, and that's where I really started digging in to becoming a musician.
Okay, I was interested to find out how you actually ended up at Oberlin. So I think it was a teacher who steered you there, which is the same thing that happened with me. So you started taking formal voice lessons about when? About your junior year?
Yeah, I was junior year. I was about 17 years old.
Okay. And when did you realize that you had something special?
I think it was somewhere around that time. I had been cast in the musical in junior, in my sophomore year in high school, and I played Rooster and Annie. And I wouldn't say it was a vocal tour de force, but it grabbed me in a way that made me realize that singing was something I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I didn't know what I wanted to sing per se. I was really into musicals at the time. I was, Phantom of the Opera had recently come out, Les Mis, Chess. And my voice had a natural facility going all the way up. So things like chess that have like a high E flat in them, these were attainable. So I knew I wanted to sing something. And I thought getting a classical education would be the safest way to do it. If I wanted to become a jazz singer or music theater or opera, whatever it was, getting a classical education was probably the best way, the safest way to do that and have longevity in the career.
So you ended up at Oberlin, and what were your first impressions when you got there?
It was, shall we say, eye-opening. Um, I came from my background, my family history. I mentioned my dad was military, so there was a sense of conservativeness in the upbringing. But my mom was kind of the opposite end of the spectrum. She was very into New Age um, ideas and certainly into encouraging her children to pursue whatever passion um, cropped up for them, which for me became music. And so there was this combination of kind of regimentedness and also kind of freestyle artist nature.
Right.
And so when I got to, I would say I erred on the side of conservative when I first got to Oberlin, and it was my first interaction. My high school was predominantly white, and so it was my first interaction with ethnicities and my first interaction with um, other cultures, people from other countries, spending large amounts of time getting to be friends with people from all around the world, being part of an artist community really for the first time, being part of a liberal arts environment for the first time, having radical ideas being thrown my way. First friendships with gay people, lesbian. At that time, there wasn't much focus beyond gay and lesbian. But yeah, it was a lot of information thrown my way, and I thought it was great. It was so expansive,
Yeah.
and it was so like opening. It opened my mindset, which allowed me to open my heart set and really delve in further to becoming an artist.
That's awesome. Um, so I came along. What year were you when I came in as a freshman? You
I
were
think I
probably
was I was I 2 years ahead of you or 3 years ahead of you.
it was either two or I think you were three. You
Okay.
were 3 years. I think you were in the third year of your
Hmm.
of the 5 year
And
program.
I stuck around for 5 years, so
Yeah.
yeah, that's why it's.
Um, so that when I came in as a freshman, I came into the studio. My mic level's a little low. Let me see if I can adjust that for you here. How's that, Jim? So someone said my mic level's a little low. So we adjusted it just a bit. Hopefully that helps. Um, but as I came in as a freshman, you were probably sophomore, junior, maybe
Hmm.
in that time period. And I have to say that I came from an area, small town, where I was kind of the big fish.
Hmm.
Um, and I came into this studio that was just crazy. The amount of talent that was there. I'll never forget my first studio class. We walk in and sit down, and David gets up to sing. And you sang Que Jelly da Manina. That was my first time ever hearing a high C in person.
Really?
Yes. And
Wow.
it was one of the most intimidating things I have ever ever experienced. I sat there and I was like, wait, I don't belong in this class. These people are like world class professionals who should be on a stage right now. I don't belong here. But I'm glad I stuck around because I learned so much every week from being able to watch you.
Well, thank you, man. That means a lot.
Yeah, just being able to come and sit in, either if I sat in on one of your lessons, watching you in studio class, you and others, we had almost like an all-star team of singers
Well,
in that
the
studio.
that studio was, as far as I understood it, because I actually had the same experience that you did when I first got to Oberlin my freshman year.
Wow.
I remember there were some seniors and there were some master's degree students who were in there. There were two guys, and they were both tenors, and they were in their 30s. So they had quite a lot, more years of development in
Hmm.
their throats. And it was the same thing. I think the guy's name was Dana, and he sang, I want to say Butterfly, and I just remember being like, it was the same reaction. I was like, because then and coming from a high school where the arts was well taken care of. We had a
Hmm.
great choir teacher and we had a great drama coach and we had a great program, but really the emphasis was certainly on sports
Right.
in my high school. And so, I did have the advantage and I did feel like the big fish, but I got to Oberlin and I went, and that's the nature of that school. They just
Yeah.
breed excellence and they have such great teachers and such great coaches that by the time you walk out of there, you have all the tools, and then it's like, what do you do with it?
Yeah. So speaking of the days of Oberlin, um, what did that time with Richard Miller mean to you?
Oh wow! I mean, it was it was the foundation, really. I mean, I was so fortunate that my voice teacher in Denver, um, Mary Louise Burke. If you're watching, Mary Louise, hi. Um, but she studied with him, so I had a linear technical approach. So
Hmm.
she was teaching the principles that he handed to her and taught her how to teach the teaching of singing, and the principles out of his book. So when I got there, I knew his lingo and I knew his kind of style, and um, that foundation was able to grow and become more stable. And it was really cerebral.
Right.
His approach could be very abstract at times, but that worked for me for whatever reason. I never really understood the imagery kind of approach of singing,
Hmm.
so it worked for me, and it set me up. And his work ethic was very, very intense.
Yeah.
I remember I remember there were more than a handful of times when I would go into my lesson, and Oberlin is just an intense environment. Every class, every teacher of every class thinks that their class is the number one most
Most
important thing
important
in your
thing.
life. And so whether it was piano class or music history or the actual voice lessons or taking another instrument or whatever it was, there was such a heavy workload, and he would assign a certain number of songs every week. And there were more than a handful of times where I would come into my lesson and it wasn't memorized, or I hadn't practiced it 6 hours that week, or whatever was the expectation maybe in his mind. And he videotaped every lesson so that you could go and review that tape and listen to what you were doing, which in hindsight was literally the best thing a person could do. Having a recording, making a recording of yourself and listening to that recording back is the best biofeedback a
Yeah.
singer can do for themselves. It's like having a voice teacher, external voice teacher inside your own head.
Hmm.
But there were times when I didn't review the tape or whatever was the thing, and he knew that I hadn't practiced, and he would go over and eject the tape and throw the tape at me and say, "Come back when you're serious.
Yeah.
Come back when you're ready to work." And I was like, ah. And after that first first year where there was a handful of times where that did not happen anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And once I got over that and said, okay, this is my main focus, this is my main priority, and all these other classes I have to work at them, but this is my main priority. Once I sorted that out, then the path became clear.
Wow. So you were at Oberlin. You studied with Richard, and you stuck around and you started kind of dabbling in directing while you were
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
You stuck around for the fifth year master's program.
Yep.
Um, what did you? What was it that interested you about directing, and what led you to that?
Uh, if you'd asked me at the time, I would have said I couldn't tell you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was partly that as a senior, I didn't have any work already lined up. I mean, if I'm just being purely honest, I didn't have any work lined up for straight out of school, and I didn't have an apprentice program, and or any of these things like ready to go. I hadn't thought that far ahead. So probably halfway through my second semester senior year, I thought, okay, well, I guess I'm sticking around another year. I got to figure this out. And I thought, okay, well, what are my options? There aren't that many master's degrees at Oberlin
No,
in the
I think
conservatory.
there's only a couple.
Yeah, there's only a few, and opera theater being one of them. So I definitely kind of committed myself, and I thought, if I'm gonna stick around and pay tuition for a whole of the year, I I got to get everything out of it that I can.
Right.
So as a master's of opera theater, I took every course that pertained in any way to theater. I took set design. I took directing. Um, kind of costume design, just everything kind of. So I would have an understanding of every department
Mm-hmm.
that pertained to opera, and it was the second semester of that year where I actually did start booking work. I had gotten the first armored man in the Magic Flute at Cleveland Opera,
Yeah, I remember
and
that. Yeah.
yeah, and so that those performances were going to conflict um, with the opera scenes program that semester. So I struck a deal with Judith Lang, who was the directing teacher and the director of the operas at that time, and she was very into an alternative approach to opera. She staged, as you remember, she staged all of the shows were
Mm-hmm.
always in English so that they could have accessibility and you didn't have to go through the steps of translating in your head or reading subtitles. You could be there with the characters. And she had always had this thing in the back of her mind of TV never really embraced opera to the degree it could have.
Mm-hmm.
They did broadcasts, they did concerts, they did um, different things with it, but it never the two mediums never really found a good fusion. Um, so I don't remember when that came up across the course of maybe first semester, but we had this idea to, if I were to film an opera scene and make a video production of it instead, in lieu of the opera scenes program performance.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was my first foray into directing and my first foray into directing film.
Wow. And so you booked your first real gig is at Cleveland Opera, and that sort of started to transition into your young artist years.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into those years, I just want to segue into a segment that I want to premiere tonight of our Young Artist Spotlight. And I've been privileged to have a young man who has submitted his materials and wanted to be a part of the program tonight, who happens to be a recent graduate of Oberlin, which I had the chance to meet him a few months ago when I was there to do a recital, and his name is Mateo Adams. Hi, Mateo. I can't hear you. No, I can't hear you now. Let me make sure you're not coming out of these other set of earplugs. Yep. Can you say something? Huh. Well, his sound was working perfectly just a little while ago. Um, while we try to get this fixed, I'll just talk about you for a second. So Mateo is a recent graduate of Oberlin, and he studied there with Tim Lefebvre. Um, and his recent performances and role studies include Alma Viva and Frederick, both at the Oberlin Opera Theater, the title role of Candide with the Varna International Festival in 2019. Um, why don't you try to go out and come back in, Mateo, while I'm doing this? The role of Candide with the Varna International Festival, and Tamino in Mozart's Die Zauberflöte with the Austin Summer Opera Workshop. And currently, Mateo is in New York and will be pursuing his master's at NYU. And once we get him back here, we will. While we wait for him to get back, why don't you guys enjoy his performance of Firenze come un albero fiorito from Gianni Schicchi.
Avete torto, è fine astuto, ogni malizia di leggi e codici, conosce sa, modeggiatore, beveggiatore, ce la voglia non me fa nuove rara, e Gianni Schicchi che la prepara, gli occhi furbi li illuminano di riso lo strano viso, ombreggiato da quel suo gran nasone che parla un toracchione per così viene al contodo ebbene che vuol dire sangue stupire grette vicine Firenze come un albero fiorito che piazza dei signori a tronco e fronte ma le noditi forse nuova portano dalle convali limite feconde che Firenze, Germania ed Alste salgon paladi, salietoni l'arno prima di core alla voce cantava baciando piazza Santa Croce il suo canto si dolce si sonoro e noi soccesi luciletti in coro oggi scendono dolci in orti a scienze amor mio ricca splendida Firenze veniva del saggio dalle castello vengo dal fralla bella e vengo giotto dal mugel salvosa il medici mercante coraggioso basta con gli odi credi coi ripicchi viva la gente nove e Gianni Schicchi
Wow, thank you for sharing that with us, Mateo, and welcome back.
hello, can you hear me?
Hey, how are you? We can hear you now.
I caught I
So
caught the performance, so I
great
was just
job.
like, okay.
I enjoyed your
Thank
performance.
you.
I'm sure David did as well.
Absolutely.
Um, how did you how do you feel about where you are right now? You just graduated
Yeah,
from Oberlin.
yeah.
Okay. How did you enjoy your time there?
I really enjoyed my time at Oberlin. Again, just like David said, I grew up in Texas, so my eyes were very much opened to new ways of thinking, and I enjoyed my 4 years there. Um, I had a lot of performing opportunities, working with a lot of the faculty there, and that was my first, sort of experience with voice lessons in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I am very lucky to have um, started at Oberlin. So yeah,
Well, as an OB alum, you've got some big shoes, big Texan shoes to fill, because
yeah,
they've produced some really good Texas singers. A couple of them during our time there, and Sean Haywood and Waldo Gonzalez and several others. Um, so, are you currently in New York now?
yes, I am. Yeah,
Okay. And when have you already started your master's program?
my master's program starts September 1st. So yeah.
September 1st.
Mhm.
Well, we wish you all the best of luck
Thank you.
in your studies and on your continued journey. And we look forward to seeing how you continue to grow as an artist and where your career goes,
Thank you so much.
post your studies. All
Yeah,
right. Thanks
thanks.
for joining us, Mateo.
No problem. See you.
All right. Have a good night. Wow.
Dude, that's so cool. That's so cool that you are able to create a spotlight like that for someone, for a young
Well,
artist. Very cool,
I
man.
think it's important because, especially now, with everything being shut down, it's I don't have a huge platform, but what platform I do have, I can use it to help somebody else.
Hmm.
And any way I can do that, whether it's posting someone's video, whether it's sharing their, on during this broadcast, any way we could do it, I think we gotta help bring others up behind us. Um,
Absolutely.
but let's get back to you. So now we're moving into your young artist years. You've been performing at Cleveland Opera,
Hmm.
uh, and you went on from there, I believe, to Pittsburgh, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, and
I
tell us
spent.
about your years in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I spent 2 years in Pittsburgh in the young artist program there with Maestro Tito Capobianco at the helm
Mm-hmm.
in those days, and it was extraordinary. I made some great friends, but also it was having the opportunity to shadow fantastic talent
Yeah.
and to spend time working on roles, um, getting some main stage time in kind of secondary tenor roles, but also understudying every um, lead role as well, working with the coaches there and having master classes. Um, it was an exceptional period of my career, I think.
Well, I remember getting a chance to come and see you at Pittsburgh in the production of Rigoletto, and
The famous Rigoletto.
yeah, the famous Rigoletto, and it was outside of the production that I'd seen at Oberlin, it was my first professional production that I had a chance to see,
Mhm.
and I think you brought the house down, man. You really you were a wonderful Duke, and
Thank you.
let's see here. I thought I had. Did I delete that?
Tell
No,
me you tried to pull the YouTube video.
I couldn't have. Uh, so, but the production I remember was a little shocking for me. Um,
In what way?
coming coming from conservative southeastern Missouri,
Oh,
it was a
yes.
little risque,
It
and
was risque is a good word to use.
and but it was, I mean, it was enjoyable. It was the first opera if I'm going to be honest with you. It was the first opera that I sat through that I didn't fall asleep.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, if I'm honest too, it's very challenging to sit in the audience for me, and I don't know if you have this experience as well, but it's difficult knowing from the other side of the stage, knowing what each person up there is going through.
Mm-hmm.
Is I become a nervous wreck.
Yeah.
Even if they're having a stellar performance, even if they're having a great, like the greatest night of their life, I know that it's, always a razor thin edge, that it could all like turn into disaster at any minute. So I find it's so difficult for me to enjoy going to shows. But that's really nice of you. I'm glad we were all able to hold your keep you up.
To kind of say, well, for me, it was because I typically listen to classical music at night when I'm trying to relax to go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get me in an opera house, the lights go down and the music starts to play.
Right.
My body's like, oh, okay, this is sleepy time.
It's like a Pavlovian response or something.
Yeah.
Oh, funny.
So I don't know what happened with that clip. Lucky you.
Probably just as well.
But,
I don't want to turn the color of my shirt turn red.
No, you sounded great though, man.
It was a fun show. Well, that was one of the things about Pittsburgh was Tito Capobianco was a brilliant director and a brilliant human being, and he was able to very charismatically bring the best parts of you out of yourself. It's always difficult in opera. I've always found it challenging. One of the biggest challenges to find the focus of reality where characters are interacting
right
in a three-dimensional space, but also to try and cheat outwards so that the audience can hear all the words that you're saying and kind of being able to connect with them side-eye.
And to make it look normal.
And to make that somehow look normal.
Yeah.
And at the same time, being a young artist and having some stage experience, but still at the very beginning of my stage experience, always worried about the technical demands of the role, that a lot of times I would go into a technical stance and a technical position so that I would have the right alignment for my voice to project correctly. And it would end up that I'd go like into this internal place where I'm thinking about my voice and thinking about the words and thinking. And I'd end up staring at the floor. Mm-hmm. And he would come over anytime it would happen, literally just slap me across the face, not hard, just kind of like, hello, wake up. You're not here. You're not in this scene. You're not connecting to anybody. You're looking at cockroaches on the floor. Please don't look at the cockroaches. Okay, let's go again. And it was just something so simple as that just like takes the edge off of the performance, takes the stress out of all the mental games that we play as artists with ourselves during a performance, and bring the humor back into the room. It was a giant. It was an amazing experience.
As luck would have it, I was able to find the clip here. And enjoy this clip of the Questa Quella from the first act of Rigoletto.
Oh, che ridicolo.
Hey, you sound
I have,
absolutely.
I have absolutely no idea how I pulled off that gymnastery
I
because
don't know how you sang it with a woman hanging off of you like that.
I can only imagine that in the moment, because that production, like, it was, like you said, it was risque, it was very intense, and it's kind of a blur because I was in the middle of performing that production and already rehearsing, studying the vocals and the score for the next production. And so all I can imagine is that it must have been like a counterbalance thing with this the girl from the dance corps, that she was like counterbalancing my body weight or something. I don't even remember how we got into that configuration, but it didn't interrupt the appoggio. So that's all that matters.
Yeah,
I'm sure if it had been a problem, we would have found another solution.
so as we let's go. Whoops, knocked over my water here. But let's go beyond your young artist years. So in what year was it? Was it 2002? I believe 2003.
2002.
2002. You had the privilege of making your Broadway debut
Yes.
in a groundbreaking production by Baz Luhrmann, and of La Boheme.
Hmm.
And I mean this production just kind of took Broadway and the world by storm, and was all that basically anyone was talking about for quite some time. Tell me about your experience with that production.
I would have to say that production remains really at the top of my list of experiences as a mature tenor, and kind of everything that I had been learning and working on and studying and preparing for really was leading up to that moment.
Mm-hmm.
The way Baz treated the rehearsal process was unlike anything that I had ever experienced. We didn't really even sing a note for the first couple weeks of rehearsal. We took the Italian and we took the English translation of the Italian, and we were kind of trying to build character relationships through just the text.
Mm-hmm.
How do we make realistic characters without the music? How do we, opera characters kind of depend on the music for their timing, for their delivery, for their beats. What happens when we take all of that away and we strip people down to just the bare essence of what they're saying? And we treated it like a play, and we had to eventually translate the English into English, because it was archaic English. It was turn of the century, 1915 something, 1918. I don't remember when Bohème was written, but turn of the century. And so the English is not how we would relate to each other. So we would find, well, what is the modern day equivalent of that phrase? For example, all the Bohemians in the garret and how they were relating to each other and what they were saying. And we would play different like acting games, focus games, and it really gave us the time and space to create something that you just don't get the time and space to do that in regional opera or anywhere actually. It's like you arrive in a normal circumstance. You arrive, you get a couple weeks to throw the show on its feet. You tech it, and that's the show. You perform. And because it's always on to the next thing, always trying to like keep the cost low, keep the budget down, because at the end, opera is still a business. And the experience with Baz just allowed for a depth that I had never experienced, being able to connect with the Mimi, to connect with the Shonar, Colline, even just actually every single person in that show was given a fully fleshed out character. Every person in the chorus had a backstory. And it was just like, it was this depth of connection that really it awakened something else in my consciousness as to what the point of opera is, and what and why we do what we do. Do we get up there to stand up and sing our notes and be impressive and try and wow people, or are we trying to tell a story? And this was the first time I really explored the idea that we're there to tell a story.
So it's interesting that you mentioned the word connection, because I believe it was during this production you made a very special connection.
Yes, I did.
And would you care to share that with us?
Absolutely. So during the course of the second incarnation of the production, because it did close on Broadway and then had a revival in Los Angeles. And towards the very, very end of that, I fell in love with one of my co-stars, Sarah Joy, and we just started like living the story of La Boheme. These two young crazy kids just deciding to make a go of it, and on paper it should have been a disaster. But there was a connection that we found that went beyond the music, and yeah, here we are 16 plus years later.
And still going strong.
Still going strong. Oh, I love that shot.
The family picture with Sarah.
That's the family
Cosmo.
picture. Oh.
Cosmo's all dressed up, and yeah, that's great.
Yeah, we got him a tux. It's not a Tom Ford, but it's.
So I think the last time I got to see you and Sarah Joy was back in 2017.
17, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, when I happened to be in New York performing, and the director and his wife surprised me, and I had no idea they'd invited you for this performance. I was doing my first Otello, and
which was amazing.
Even though I was sick as a dog. But yeah, I just remember coming back, and they said, "Oh, there's someone here to see you," and I said, "Who would be here to see me in the middle of nowhere in New York?" And sure enough, it was David and Sarah Joy.
Yep.
And you really don't know how much that meant that you would take the time to come and be there for that, because it was a special night for me, and it was nice to have someone I actually knew there to share that special evening with.
Oh well, it was a fantastic night. I mean, I know it was your first Otello, and I can imagine you might have been very nervous about it, but you killed it. It was an amazing show.
I have to give thanks to Maria and Louis Odi for that opportunity. And if you're not familiar with the Phoenicia International Festival of Voice, you should really check them out, because they are doing some groundbreaking things right now in the midst of this pandemic to keep live opera in front of an audience. So they're going to be doing something really extraordinary here in the next few weeks in upstate New York. So after Broadway, and this was for me was weird, because this was during the time when I wasn't singing, and I remember getting a message from one of our fellow classmates from Oberlin, and they said, "Have you seen what's going on?" And I was like, "What do you mean, what's going on?" And they send me a video. And they said David joined the group. And I said, "Oh, you mean like a boy band?" and they said, "No, not quite, but yeah, they're all guys, but it's not like your boy band, and so they sent me a clip of what I now know as Il Divo, and at first it was kind of like, okay, this is interesting. I didn't know, I, I never expected that to take on the life that it did.
Well, you and me both,
But it was
in
just,
truth.
it was fascinating to me. One, because I had never thought of, the classical crossover thing being this huge market.
Hmm.
No one did, I don't think.
No, I don't. I don't think anyone did. The four of us were really just trying to make something that we could all be proud of.
How did you guys even end up together?
It was an audition process. Simon Cowell was looking um, for four guys to be in. I actually call it's an opera boy band. I have yet to find a better way to describe it to someone that kind of encapsulates the nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't really ever sing anything from the operatic repertoire. We investigated, as you said, the classical crossover thing, which at the time was still a very new kind of concept. There had been, the great success that was happening before we came along with the three tenors, and seeing the mass marketability of opera. And that was an event that could not be replicated or duplicated, nor should anyone try. It was a moment in time with three voices of extraordinary capacity who all teamed up. And so there was that was kind of the first iteration, and then there was kind of Pavarotti and Friends, where he would do duets with various people of different genre disciplines, but they did what they did and he did what he did. It was just they were doing it together.
Right.
And then kind of the Sarah Brightman, Andrea Bocelli, they really kind of kicked the door open of being able to use a classical approach with material that is not the operatic repertoire or even music theater repertoire. And so this really created a new framework. And then Simon came in and said, all right, well, this is a thing. This is it's a niche thing, but it's a thing. And people love this. And the people who are aware of this go crazy for it. So he noted that there was a big hole in the market for more of this kind of high caliber singing in very relatable music.
So when you started this audition process and were selected to be a part of this group, did you ever expect to go on this whirlwind that you've been on for the last 15, 16 years?
No, sir. No, I did not. I was actually, I had started the process of the recording with the guys, I think it was April of 2004. And I had work lined up for that fall because as an opera singer, and I had not, other than the La Boheme on Broadway, I didn't have that much recording experience as an opera singer. But from what I understood, you made a cast recording or you made an album of whatever, of opera arias, and you kind of put it on the shelf, and maybe you did like a little bit of promotion around it, but that was it.
Right.
And you kind of put it on the shelf, and it was kind of became instant catalog, and people bought it over time. Great. You went back to your career and, get back on the stage. And I remember having things lined up in the fall and saying, well, talking to Simon and everyone at the record company and saying, look, I've got these things coming up in November. So how long do we think this is going to last? Because we were in the recording process. It had been about a month and we still were continuing to work. The whole process ended up taking 4 months because we didn't know each other's voices. We didn't know whose voices were going to sound well together, work well in the harmonies, how the songs would flow, who's going to take the melody, who's going to take the harmony. Like we had no clue, no format. for any of it. So it was all just experiment. What language should it be? And most of those songs off that first album are in we made 3 separate recordings, one in English, one in French, one in Spanish, or no, it was English, Spanish, and Italian, just to see which one would have the best feel for that song. So we got into about month 2, and I'm like, how long is this going to take? Because I have a thing I'm doing in November, and they're like, oh, yeah, no, apparently you don't understand. No one has really explained this to you. This is the rest of your life for the next foreseeable future. And I was like, what do you mean? And they said, well, once this goes out, we have to go through the process of promoting it, and that's going to take about a year. And when that, if this is as successful as we think it's going to be, you'll be working on your second album. I was like, well, what about my shows? They're like, well, you kind of have to decide if you want to be here or not. It's up to you. And so I took a little bit of time with that, and I had kind of cataloged everything I had as a 35-year-old singer. I guess it was 30 at the time. As a 30-year-old singer, I had already had the good fortune to perform most of the roles that were appropriate for my voice, whether in the young artist programs or in professionally. And I was starting to do kind of repeat things. As you do, you start getting into that groove of your career where you find your voice and you know what's going to work. I was starting to do.
And you'd had some fairly large debuts in your career at that point with Opera Australia and La Scala, Teatro La Scala in Milan, and so it wasn't like you weren't on the upward path in this career.
Right. And I did kind of like weigh out, well, at best, if it was successful and we'd record a second album and then we do that album, at best, I'd be out of the circuit for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of my projection across the whole thing, cut to just everybody adopting us. And us being from 4 different countries. So we were a UK band technically, none of us from the UK, and we're all from different countries. And just having different places just kind of adopt us, everywhere from Australia, Japan, Norway, the US, like completely different cultures, finding interest in this thing, and became one of the most fascinating things for me that and really helped me to see and understand how music transcends pretty much all sociological borders. Mm-hmm. There's something that it speaks to. We took most of our songs and translated them into foreign languages to give it a suave and debonair kind of feel to it, but also to kind of prove a point. Taking songs like My Way and Unbreak My Heart and new songs that had been written for us as well, and throwing them into random foreign languages, and they still worked. And just to show the power of music to be able to reach people, even though they don't know what you're saying, or maybe they do, maybe they recognize the tune, or maybe they don't, but it didn't matter. People just wanted to be moved by music, and that's what I found the most fascinating of the whole process.
And you guys have developed a very loyal fan base. Mm-hmm. When this interview was announced, I can't even tell you the number of times I'm getting these share notices from people I have no idea who they are, and from places like Japan and Brazil, and we have people watching tonight in the chat from Brazil, from Japan, from so many different places, and it's just amazing the fan base you guys have built and have been able to cultivate over these years, and did you ever think that when someone mentioned the name David Miller that it would be followed by multi-platinum recording artist?
Nope. No, it's still, even hearing it out loud, it's still something that hasn't really entirely landed yet. I mean, I did a thing during the Il Divo social media takeover where on the day that I dedicated to Il Divo, I decided to go, because as you said, multi-platinum selling, and the record companies from the different countries would give us an award celebrating it had gone gold, or maybe it had gone platinum, or whatever it was. And as time went on, those numbers still continued to grow as catalog sales for the first album, and it would reach higher and higher peaks to celebrate. But I never had the opportunity to open those awards. They ended up being shipped to New York and went into a storage cage because there was no place for it in the apartment. And then moved out of the city and have a bit more space, but immediately just kind of like everything I didn't know what to do with ended up going into the basement. So I decided on camera I was going to look at what was there, have a look, open these things up. And it was like Christmas, seeing these moments kind of just, and all flooding back of like 16 years of all of these moments all at once. It was intense, and it has been an intense ride, but it's nose to the grindstone for me. Like I just whatever's right in front of me, doing whatever's right in front of me.
So I didn't know if you were aware that apparently in 2006 you all set the Guinness World Record as the most commercially successful classical crossover group in history.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to say anything other than that myself. But it's given you this musical phenomenon, basically, which is what Il Divo is, has given you such a huge platform to go on and do other things. And as we've been dealing currently with the COVID-19 pandemic, and everyone's been in quarantine, and basically the live performing world has been shut down, you haven't really slowed down much. You've been staying pretty busy. And recently you and Sarah Joy released a track that I believe is going to be on your upcoming debut album, solo album. And you guys have been so generous in that you have been donating the proceeds from this release for this track to is it the Artist Fund?
Sorry?
And which group have you all been making donations to for this track? For the O Suave Fanchula.
Yes, I have now blanked on it.
Well, while we do that, you guys can just tell it for yourself. I want you guys to see what they've been doing, and
the Artist Fund. The Artist Fund. Thank you. Sorry.
I mean, it's just so fabulous what they've done. So watch this short trailer from David and Sarah Joy.
Hello, everyone. It's David.
And Sarah Joy. And of course, Cosmo.
Of course. And we're very happy to announce that we're teaming up with the Actors Fund to raise money for artists in this time of need.
Right now, virtually every live performer in the world is out of work because of COVID-19. Our friends and colleagues in the arts have been hit so hard, and we want to help in any way that we can.
So, for the duration of the ban on large gatherings, Bohemisphere will be hosting a Donately portal. And when you donate an amount of your choosing to the Actors Fund, you'll receive a link with exclusive access to our newly recorded duet.
Your donation will go directly to the Actors Fund, and the track is our gift to you. It's the beautiful Act 1 duet from Puccini's La Bohème, and it's a special piece of music to us because, as most of you know, it's how we met.
So we hope you'll join us in supporting artists through this fantastic organization. We know this is a difficult time for everyone, and we hope that each one of you are staying safe and healthy and at home.
Thank you so much for all of your love and support.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I think that's so great what you guys are doing with this track, and I'd like to encourage everybody who's watching, to take the time to go and visit bohemisphere.com and download this track so that you too can help support artists who are struggling during this time. And
Well,
so
unfortunately,
what brought about this idea? What gave you this idea to do this?
well, I just want to clarify one thing. We, in conjunction with so many other people who took it upon themselves to create situations for donations for the Actors Fund, they had record amounts of money pouring in for helping. And the Actors Fund is an amazing, to answer your question, how did this all start? It was, sorry, I'm getting a little ahead of myself in the story. I have all the stories happening up here. I need to make it come out here. So we'll start at the beginning. So the pandemic was a situation that caused everything to come to a grinding halt. And I was already in the process of working on my solo album and had gotten to a certain point with all of the recording when then it was impossible to get back into the studio because quarantine was now a thing and everywhere. So working on the album kind of came also to a grinding halt with the rest of the world. But we had already finished O Suave Fanciulla. We had already gotten that. That's going to be featured in the first part of the album release. So that was already ready to go. And I remember as we were contemplating, how would it feel to release a solo album in the midst of everybody being out of work. And it didn't make any sense whatsoever. It didn't feel right to be like, hey, give me money for opera, and everyone's just trying to figure out what the heck is going on. So it became just, the answer became very clear, like, it's ready to go. I want to put it out into the world. Let's use it to create some good for as many people as we can. And so we investigated several different charity organizations, and the one that made the most sense was the Actors Fund, because the Actors Fund is such a wide platform. It's not just for actors, as the title implies, but the full title is the Actors Fund for Everyone, and they help actors, they help directors, they help musicians, they help anyone who's related to the theater arts, crew, people in wardrobe and costumes, special effects. These people help circus performers. They, like anyone who's in the performing arts. These people create a system of assistance and make that available to pretty much everyone. So we just wanted to be part of a system that could really be a massive safety net for all of our friends, all of our colleagues, and just in a way just contribute to helping. But at this point, because they had such record numbers of money flowing in, we did eventually take the track down and have geared it back up to being part of the album release, which will be later this year.
Okay. Well, speaking about the upcoming album, this is going to be your first solo release, and it's entitled. Do you want to share the title?
Yes, it is entitled Revolution.
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 As you can see here, it is a Revolution. An album in 4 acts, and this is Act 1.
Yes.
So I'm assuming we're going to have some follow-ups to look forward to in the future.
Yes.
And what was the premise behind this first album?
Well, the album was the idea for the album actually came all the way back in 2013, and this was before A Hand of Bridge had become part of my desire to remake that film, and I just had an idea of I was going to make, record a few French tracks, make a French album, French opera. So Stephen Mercurio, a conductor I had worked with many times over the course of my opera career, he said, I reached out to him and I said, what would it take to pull something like that together? And he said, I can help you with that. And he went over and recorded 10 tracks, and he brought it back. And then all of a sudden I found myself creatively, I wanted to pursue Hand of Bridge and make that short film that would go to film festival. My brain started synthesizing all of the different events throughout the course of several years with Il Divo, and one of which being kind of the unofficial videographer for several years. All of a sudden, all of that started coming to the forefront of my creative consciousness. So the album kind of went on hold, got put to the back burner. And then when I pulled it back out to have a look, it seemed kind of one lopsided, a little French heavy. So went back to the drawing board and got some Italian opera on there as well. Got a couple duets, as you mentioned, the O Suave Fanciulla. And so the amount of work at that point that I had put together was going to be too big for one album. So then it became a thing where I was observing what the current trend was for record companies to release an extended play, an EP, rather than to release albums. So a chunk of 2 or 3 songs, and this is kind of the current trend for record companies to release EPs. So I was looking at that and I thought, well, if we were to apply that to this, we could make 4 EPs and kind of give people a chunk at a time. And that's kind of how it all evolved. So then each chunk represents a certain period of my career. There's the Act 1 is my favorite things to sing. Act 2 is bel canto. Act 3 is I went through a very big period of singing mainly French repertoire before Il Divo. And then Act 4 is kind of everything that my voice is appropriate for now.
Wow. So we have something really great to look forward to then.
Yeah, it's on the way, and still working on it because COVID has made everything very, very slow. But it's on the way.
Good. Well, we can't wait. And you mentioned in all that, you mentioned A Hand of Bridge, which is your official directorial debut, film debut, and
Yes.
you've had quite a bit of success with this debut on the film festival circuit.
Yes, I at a certain point, as I mentioned, after the French album was kind of in process, I started having these visions pop into my head, where I would be listening to. It was mainly because Sarah Joy and I would periodically do concerts together, and so to brush up on the music or material, I would, I'd break out a recording or two and listen to that. And as I was listening to them, I would be seeing the action of La Traviata or Romeo and Juliet. I would be seeing kind of an image and not realizing what I was actually seeing. And I was trying to think, was that a production I was in? Was that a production I saw? What is it that I'm actually seeing as I'm listening to this? And I realized I was inventing it in my head. I was beginning to see opera from a cinematic standpoint. And so that became a really exciting new idea that bubbled to the surface very, very quickly once it had started. And so my first attempt at that was to take the Samuel Barber 9-minute opera, A Hand of Bridge, which is the shortest opera in the repertoire, and turn that into a cinematic event, creating a cinematic version of this micro opera, and it ended up working. It went to over 30 film festivals, and it won Best Film several times and Best Sound once, and it just enjoyed a tremendous 2-year run.
Yeah, it looks like
Through the independent film festival circuit.
Seattle
Yep.
Film Festival, and
Seattle
Woodstock,
Film Festival, Woodstock,
the
yeah.
Soho Film Festival, Vero
Mm-hmm.
Beach,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, and it's you've had a little bit of a history with A Hand of Bridge, correct?
Yes, well, A Hand of Bridge was, as I mentioned at the very top of the show, in my days at Oberlin, the deal that I struck with the directing teacher to film an opera scene, that project, that was A Hand of Bridge. And
So have you had a chance to go back and look at that production compared to this?
yes, and I actually found the old footage. I borrowed Richard Miller's videotape, his video camera on the weekends for about 2 months, and I say very little budget. It was zero budget, and just called in favors from everybody, and just tried to make something that we could all have. And I don't know if you remember, but you were in it too.
Was I?
You were. You were. I sent you that clip. You do have a clip of it, the very last frame of it, where it's in the Cymbeline aria, and basically all the character Bill is fantasizing about his blonde bombshell secretary. Her name's Cymbeline, and he's driving himself crazy with jealousy, trying to figure out who she might be spending her evening with. And he lists off a whole bunch of names of all these people that she might be spending her time with. And I staged it where literally every guy that I knew and was friends with in the conservatory, she was just sat in a chair, and everyone just all comes into frame. And it's like, mm-hmm. And you were right at the back, right behind the chair, and you're like, mm-hmm.
Oh, that's awesome. I'd love to see that. But I'm going to show real quickly. This is an earlier form of the version of the trailer for Hand of Bridge. I had a little technical snafu with the other one. But
Okay.
this is the first trailer that you released for A Hand of Bridge. And that was the original trailer that you released. And for those of you who are interested, you can go and see A Hand of Bridge right now on bohemisphere.com/A Hand of Bridge. And it's on demand, video on demand, correct?
Mm-hmm. It's it's a bit confusing because the original configuration, that's the website that you mentioned, but the video on demand, it's actually reversed. It's a handofbridge.bohemisphere.com.
Ah, okay.
We're just trying to make it very confusing for everybody to try and get in there and see the film.
So, but if you get a chance, go and check this out. You know, it's less than 10 minutes, so it's not going to take up too much time of your time. But I guarantee you're going to enjoy it. David, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I just want to thank you for giving us the time that you did to just sit and chat tonight. Those who have been watching, your fans from all over the world, from Chihuahua, Mexico, Argentina, have all been sitting here and watching and saying hello and how much they love you and how much they love Il Divo. But on behalf of everyone who's watching and myself, thank you so much for taking the time to come and chat. Thank you. And if you're listening, Sarah Joy, thank you for allowing him to, just come and have a little sit down. We haven't had a chance to talk in a long time. So,
Well, thanks for having me, man. It's been a lot of fun.
It's been great having you, great getting able to catch up with you. And I'm so excited to see what the future holds for you and your career. And
thank you very much.
so thank you for coming and sitting down with me. And thank you all for coming and joining us tonight on Listen Up with Limmie. And we will see you in September, where we will be starting our series, the Legends series. So keep a lookout, because we're going to be announcing some very interesting and exciting guests for our Legends series in September. So until then, thank you guys for listening, and have a good night.